Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Refuge from Narcissism, and this refugee video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous, and here's her story. Hi, Ollie. Please accept this contribution from a middle-aged Australian woman. I hope this isn't going to be too difficult for you to read. I suffered growing up with two nasty narcissistic parents, and so did my siblings. I have two stepsisters, a full-blood sister, a full-blood brother, a half-brother. In this letter, I will try to focus on my father and brothers. It may seem like a long letter, but it's just a drop in the ocean. My father grew up in Argentina, and I think his father died when he was in his early teens, leaving him to support his mother, and may have had a younger brother who died of cancer when he was young. My father, who acts like he is the smartest person in the room, supported his mother after his father's death through prostituting himself. Wow. He moved from Argentina and started his family in Australia at the age of 40. However, we have not had 1 ounce of South American blood in us. I discovered this through DNA testing. Turns out I'm 63% Italian, 31% French, and 6% Spanish. My full-blood brother is a year older than me. He was left-handed creative, athletic, and pathetic at times, and cheeky as fuck. Warm brown eyes, gifted. My half-brother was born 5 years younger than me. He is the son of my stepmother and father. He was a very agreeable child, easily manipulated, above average intelligence, and no personality to speak of. My father attacks children for absolutely no reason. I think he might have intermittent explosive disorder as well as other issues. I think Hannibal Lecter lunging at you. I'm not sure why he did this, but I remember him doing this to me for speaking to my sister while she was doing a chore. He called me over, picked me up by my hair with both hands, and drop-kicked me across the backyard like a soccer ball. Scared me so bad I peed my pants. He was especially drawn to attacking young boys. My stepsister brought her son over once when I was a teenager. Her son was about 6, and my father attacked him in the backyard when nobody was around. Poor little boy was terrified. Yeah, he probably resents children because his own childhood was destroyed. So he resents children. My youngest brother was protected by my stepmother from most of the violence. He was treated like gold, and in contrast, my oldest brother was regularly beaten within an inch of his life. When I was about 3, my stepmother used to wait at the back door for my father to come home from work with all the problems she had with my siblings and me. Apparently, we were just awful. His response was to wake us up early in the morning with a belting so we didn't have to deal with their complaints when he got home from work. One of those times, my brother bit his finger and drew blood. He was only 4, and I was proud of him. These beatings didn't go on for long. Maybe they didn't think it was wise to wake up the neighborhood with terrorized children. Appearances are everything. So they adjust. When my brother was 6, I had an incident with him before bed. I was upset and went running to my parents for help. Now, what happened next, I don't know how my brother survived. My father took a large cane to my brother and me. Because I got a second whipping, most of my wounds were defensive, but my brother was sent to the headmaster's office the next day because he couldn't sit down at his chair at school. They found 27 lash marks up his legs and back, and his arm was so swollen that the authorities thought it was broken. I'm so sorry for my brother. I learned one of the most painful lessons of my life as well that day. Don't ever go ask a monster for help, ever. Family Services had our family on radar for about 6 months after this. Then they faded away with all the child protective intentions of the early 80s. I cannot get rid of his screams. When my little brother was about 6 months old, my stepmother used him as a human shield because my father tried to punch her in the face. He had a horrible dark bruise in the center of his forehead for weeks. So this is in the 80s, huh? 40s. Said he had his kids in his 40s, in the 80s. When he was about 9 months old, my stepmother was bouncing him on her lap like a toy. He reached out with the most beautiful smile to touch her face, but she frowned and flinched away from his touch with anger. I was shocked and couldn't for the life of me figure out what he did wrong. I was confused for many years about this until I realized that sociopaths lack empathy to return love. When he was 2 years old, she would put him literally on a small pedestal in the center of the room so we could all bask in his glory. On these occasions, he would be dressed in large boxer shorts with no underwear underneath, and the more he exposed his junk, the more she would coo in delight. These fucking degenerates. Fucking degenerates. Boomer women are just fucking degenerates. They're just degenerate. I don't know. And they did this to their children. I had it done to me. I know that wooing, that coo, that woo, that sexual charge that they get out of sexualizing children. Boomer women, man. Rampant among them. And in your country, it's even worse. Again, not all boomers. Not all boomers. Oh, fuck. On these occasions, he would be dressed in large boxer shorts with no underwear underneath. And the more he exposed his junk, the more she would coo in delight. I think you get the gist, oh boy do I. However, lurking in the background of his upbringing was my father. My youngest brother had different... Your father worked as a prostitute. And he's allowing his son to be sexualized. And I think to your stepmother, your father's nothing more than another trick. I think you get the gist, however. Lurking in the background of his upbringing was my father. My youngest brother had different skin tones from the rest of us, which I think my father really liked. Our complexions got lighter from oldest to youngest until it got to my half-brother, whom I always thought was a chromosome away from being albino. He had my stepmother's blue eyes, however, his were bright blue and hers were pale blue like a horror movie vampire. Her psychopathic stare was real. My younger brother could play and wrestle with my father, unlike his first three children, who had to sit back and watch with jealousy. My jealousy did not last for long, because I realized that when he was about 4 years old, the wrestling became uncomfortable for me to watch. My father would pull down his pants and bite his bum cheeks while also exposing his junk. This kind of thing went on for years, and I saw more of my brother's junk than I ever want to see in my lifetime. I couldn't help but frown in disgust when I had to witness this groping and caressing behavior, and I was constantly being sent away from the TV room and being banned from watching TV for years. I would have hated it if someone were doing this to me, but my brother was groomed to get attention this way. I also believe that a lot of weirder stuff was going on than I was privy to. I never seen any of my male friends or my friends' husbands play with their children this way. I have concluded that my stepmother allowed this play to go on under her nose for one reason only, and that she was using her own son as a fluffer. My father had an incredibly thick accent and was extremely hard to understand. On one occasion, when my oldest brother was about 11, he couldn't understand what my father meant by "go pick up the pegs from under the hoist." What the fuck was a hoist? Turned out to be the clothesline. He was dragged into the back room of the house and beaten so badly the whole house was shaking with loud thumping. Next, I saw my brother limping down the hallway like an old man. His face was struck in a grimace of pure agony. One of his hands was holding his back. No sound was coming from him. He couldn't fucking breathe. His shirt was hanging off him in shreds and his shorts were torn. Bits of skin were hanging off his scalp and face and arms, and he was bleeding almost everywhere. I hate my father so fucking bad. Fucking animal. My father is over 6 foot tall, but my brother didn't even make it to 6 foot because his growth was stunted by the continuous abuse. When I was 21, he found out where I was living and came to visit me. He was not in a good way and was self-medicating with whatever drug he could get his hands on. That night, he tried to convince me that our father deserved to die and wanted to kill him. This was my next thought. Like, as you're describing it to me, I'm like, this is the type of dude that turns around and kills his father. That snaps and kills the guy. I didn't agree at the time for various reasons. The main reason was that he simply wasn't worth going to jail for the rest of my life. My brother didn't take this well, and later I finally realized that my father had probably raped him. He died about a month later, alone in a flat in the shittiest part of town, overdosing on drugs. The police thought it was a suspicious death because he had sliced himself up and sprayed his blood all over the apartment. He was 22. It's too painful to elaborate any further on this. Sounds like he was sexually abused. That's what it sounded like what it was all leading up to in your story. When my sister was about 14, she had grown just enough hair to make a small ponytail. This enraged my stepmother, and one morning she grabbed my sister by the ponytail and yanked her head back at a 90-degree angle and started hammer punching her in the face. My sister, to her credit, fought back and pushed that bitch off her. My stepmother tried to use her fat body to pin my sister against the wall, but my sister scratched her nails down her forearms, and when she was released, ran out the back door sobbing. My stepmother ran after her, and a few months later, she stomps back into the house with a cricket bat in her hands. She points it at me and screams, "It's all my fault," and slams the cricket bat on the floor, grabs the car keys, and takes off in the car. This all happened in 1 minute. My older brother looked as serious as I was, but my younger brother just burst out laughing and said she deserved it. What the fuck? My sister was always a massive bitch, but she did nothing that day to deserve that. That's when I gave my younger brother a piece of my mind. He was about 7 at the time. Well, I mean, he's a 7-year-old. He was about 7 at the time, and the poor little dude had such a hurt look in his eyes because that was the first time I had ever ripped a fart up. I had ever ripped a fart up at him. Got angry. I guess that means got angry. He had such poor role models. He had to stand by and watch while us 3 older children were treated like slaves. It's all he ever knew. He wasn't a bad child and naturally had a good temperament. He had the opportunity to be openly mean to us older children and get his ass kissed for it, but he didn't. He was probably the most emotionally isolated of all of us, considering the age difference and the fact that we were discouraged from playing with him. I was even more discouraged from playing with him because he was the most accident-prone person I had ever met. So every time he had a play accident and got hurt, I got beaten. It kind of puts you off. He went through a couple of extremely hard years when he was about 5 and would cry and cry when he had to go to bed. He received all the attention but no love. My parents had no love in them. When my youngest brother was about 6, my father took him to Argentina to meet my grandmother. I was so jealous. When he came back, my stepmother started to bend him over the couch in the TV room and shine a torch up his asshole. She did the same thing to my older brother. She said she was looking for worms, but she never did this to my sister or me. I think we dodged a bullet there because your father was raping all your brothers. Because your father has a thing for little boys. That's why. Because your father was raping your brothers. I wonder what she would have done if my father had buggered my younger brother like I believe he had done to my older brother. My father had more weird behaviors, one of them being he never farted in front of anyone. I accidentally farted at dinner once and giggled as a reflex. He backhanded me to the floor immediately. When we went on day outings to the beach, he would always disappear to the... Oh no. When we went out to outings at the beach, he would always disappear to the toilets for long periods of time. This is what I've talked about at work, public bathrooms. He's probably off fucking banging guys in public restrooms. That He would disappear into the toilets for long periods of time. My stepmother kept commenting on this, and I'm not sure if she realized he was cruising for some glory. Yes, he was cruising for glory hole. Or he had found one. I tried to avoid him as much as possible, so there was probably a lot more weirder behaviors than I observed. I had left my hometown in my mid-teens, but was drawn back there when I was 22. I did not seek contact with my parents who were still together. One day I was walking with a male friend after doing some adult learning when I saw ahead of me my father was walking on a cross street, swinging his ass like he was selling it. He had to be pushing 60. We were literally crossing paths. He noticed me staring at him, and he turned back to look at me, and our eyes locked. His effect was completely flat. They say that the opposite of love is not hate, it's lack of emotion altogether. I was instantly furious. I could feel my eyes flashing in waves of hate emanating from my entire body. He looked a little worried, then like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and just walked off, and neither of us even broke stride. My friend asked me who he was, and I told him it was my father. He didn't say a word. That was the last time I saw my father, and after this meeting in the street, he divorced my stepmother and left the state. Yeah, probably to go bang dudes. Right now, I don't know if my parents are dead or alive. I would prefer them to be dead, so I don't have to keep planting the trees to replace the oxygen they have thieved over a lifetime. The last time I saw my youngest brother, he was 16. He was a 16-year-old, tall, mousy-haired, incredibly quiet teenager. He was so closed off I could barely get 2 words out of him. I had left home when I was 13. So he was on his own with our parents for a long time. I found him when he was about 20, then lost contact with him again. He'll be turning 40 this year, and 2 months ago I spent $700 on a private detective to find him. I sent him a Christmas card in November last year with my address on the envelope. I was not able to get his phone number, and he lives about 2,000 kilometers away from me. I don't know if his mail was filtered by his mother, if she is around, or he's ghosting me. My bestie thinks the private detective ripped me off. I'll try to send him another card without my details on the cover. If I don't get a response, I'm not sure what I'll do next. If I'll get on a plane or just not bother. I'm not even sure if I'll be safe. What kind of man will he be? Thank you again, Ollie, for speaking for my brothers. The more power to you. Anonymous. Listen, you have to assume your father sexually assaulted all your brothers. You know, I would suggest, look, I would even suggest hiring another private detective. $700 and he couldn't even get you a phone number. That seems like you did. Seems like you probably did get ripped off. This is incredibly sad. The baby boomers love their cruising. They love their cruising. And like this was, look, and I found out years later my father was going to one of these places, okay, as well. It's just the degeneracy of this generation. And look, obviously something went on, which your father was prostituting himself. Obviously has a litany of his other issues that caused this, but the sick one, the real sick one in all this is your stepmother. She enabling all of it. All of it. She knows the boys are being raped, and all she's doing is bending them over and checking up their ass. Entitled degenerates. I mean, that's the boomers. And I can't keep saying this more about this destructive generation. And again, it's not all of them. But here we are again. Here we are again, a bunch of Gen X children fucking decimated. And you know why Australia has the drug problems they have? Because these people ran rampant through Australia. They were everywhere. So, I hope that helps. Thank you so much, Anonymous, for your contribution and story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like me to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or you'd just like to make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Refuge from Narcissism. Take care.